Really appreciate you being here for this session. Buying's one of those things, isn't it? We talk about buying. Oh, we've got to get buy-in. What's buy-in? Well, it's when people buy in. What do we mean by buying? Oh, you can tell. You can tell because people are really bought in. It's like when I get one of my kids to define something for me. It's like where they use the word in the definition. And so before I really start launching into this, I get pretty excited about this topic. I just want to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of lands on which we're gathered today, and just to recognise the importance of land, sea and sky, and honour their connection to land and how they've looked after it for thousands and thousands of years, and how that was dispossessed. And just to recognise the ongoing impact of dispossession. And so to pay respects to the traditional custodians of lands on which I live and work, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations and the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and just to welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. So it's terrific that we get to talk about something like values. And so we've got two main learning objectives, and I've written them up as the proper learning objectives, very sensible. So we're looking at 4 ways in which values can be used to build buy-in. Values. Now we talk about values a lot in PBL. We have school values or expectations, but we're talking about educator values, the adults' values. Sometimes we assume that people, the adults, the staff, are just going to be completely bought into the school expectations and values. Respect. Yeah, I mean, we agree, we should respect each other, sure, but in terms of what I care, what gets me out of bed in the morning, apart from the coffee, and Felix, the 6-year-old, sort of jumping on me, what's my motivation? What's the drive? What's my value? And so that's what we're looking at here. And we're looking at 4 ways, because talking about values and this kind of stuff without actually then what do I do about it, mate? I think is a problem. So we're going to look at that. And we're going to prioritize one practice, something for you to think about, just to play with, just an idea. What could I try? How could we engage staff with this? Now, it might be that you're engaging with multiple principals and you're working at an area level. It may be that you're working with individual classroom teachers and coaching them. It may be that you are a classroom teacher and you're thinking about this for you. Either way, any of those points, I'm really, really hopeful that there's something here for you. All right, so let's talk about values. I want you to have a think. This is not an exhaustive list of reasons why people got into teaching or into education in the first instance. We care about stuff. We care. We're caring people. But I want you to approach this whole session remembering why you got into education. Why are you here? These are in the past tense. Because if I ask you about it now, sometimes we can forget the journey. And sometimes the reason for getting into it, well, maybe that flame's been... Let's go right back. Let's check it out. Now, has anyone worked with a staff member that said this cursed phrase? Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, but. And the list of reasons, the list of things. And this is even when we've got stuff that's working. Look how well this is working. It's working so well. Yeah, but. This is a flag for us that there's maybe something we need to explore a little more. And sometimes this is about being out of alignment. When we're talking about buy-in, we're talking about alignment. We're talking about personal alignment. Not just alignment like we're aligning our school priorities like we talk about in the PBIS blueprint or our PBL documents, aligning policies, aligning practices for academics and behaviour. We're also talking about aligning the core heart of what we're doing. We're aligning the people. We're aligning the people. Yesterday I was banging on about a bunch of stuff. You're like, yeah, you were. We talk about organizations don't behave, people do. If our hearts are pointed this way, if our values are pointed this way, and we're wanting to move the organization, the people in the organization this way, it can be hard. So we need to understand, and we can be out of alignment with student outcomes. Has anyone been working with a staff member who's just not paying particularly close attention for how things are working for the learner? How's that working for the learner? How's the learner responding? I don't know. I'm in my head and I'm time traveling forward to the conversation I'm going to have with the parent tomorrow. I'm not even here. I'm not watching the outcomes. We can be out of alignment with our classroom environment. We're just insensitive to what's going on. We're so pulled around that we miss when that learner's doing the thing we've been trying to teach them to do for 6 months. You know when the student does it? Have you ever been in a classroom and you're working with a teacher and the student does the thing and you're like, they're doing it. Like when the kid's riding the bike for the first time without the training wheels. Like they're doing the skill, quick, reinforce it. And it's not their fault. It's not the teacher's fault, but we can be out of alignment with our classroom environment. And we can be out of alignment with peers, our staff, our colleagues. It can get fractious. You've got to be careful when you're saying that about those kinds of things. You can end up accidentally saying a word that you'd regret at a conference. Fractious relationships. We can be out of alignment with the direction of the school, the practices we're pushing towards. We can be out of alignment. We can be out of alignment with our purpose as a teacher. We can lose that connection. We can be right out of alignment. And, is anyone finding this, like that little tilt there, like slightly disconcerting? Straighten it up, please. This is how we feel. There's some incredible tension in being out of alignment and being asked to do stuff. You know when things just aren't, it's just not right. It's like a niggle. It's like a niggling injury. Not enough to stop you entirely, but it's hampering you. It's holding you back. It's stopping you from performing at your peak. It's stopping you from being your best version of yourself. We can be out of alignment. And so, how do we go about it? Well, we give staff PBL for PBL. PBL for PBL. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to assume that just because someone is out of alignment and they're hitting me with the yeah, but statements, that it's buy-in. That's the easy out. The easy out is for me to go, well, it's their buy-in. Well, they're saying, yeah, but, well, it's the buy-in issue. Well, it's them. There they are with the buy-in. Remember, environments. We can't rule out our own professional development practices. We can't rule it out. Have we given them the opportunities to practice? Do they have the skill? Have we done enough to teach them how to do this? I'm not just going to assume they don't have motivation. That's blaming them. I'm not going to assume. It may be the case that it's a motivation challenge, but let's make sure we've given them every possible PD support along the way. Really good stuff. Like we're not just going to like pull out the cheap bottle because we think it's buy-in. Say, well, yeah, you have a cheap glass. Nah, give them the good stuff and see how they respond. We might be surprised. Has anyone here worked with a learner that says, I'm bored, this is stupid, I shouldn't have to do this is stupid. And, oh no, he can do the work, he can do the work. He. Assumptions, right? And then when we actually check for understanding, he can't do the work. And then when we teach him, it's actually okay. It's actually interesting. So we don't want to assume that the student can't and won't enjoy the work. We don't want to assume that the teacher can't and won't learn the skill. We want to give them every opportunity. And then when they get a taste, they might be like, oh, you know what, actually, you're right. This is good, let's go. But it may be a case that the skill building is not enough. We want to check though, what's the nature of the problem? And we're going to check the environment first. We're going to check the fidelity of our systems. This is what I mean. We're going to give them the good stuff. We're going to check their experience of the system. And then we're going to look to see if it's preparation, motivation, or opportunity. I'm not jumping straight to motivation. It's easy to jump straight to motivation, but we can't suspend the rules for the adults. In a science of learning, science of behavior type approach, in an MTSS, we're not assuming that the students that can't do it won't do it. Are we? That's not our assumption. Our working assumption is we can create an effective environment where a student that doesn't look like they want to do it can thoroughly engage by us creating a really effective environment. And so we're going to do the same thing for staff. All right, so let's break down motivation. So now we're at the point where we've ruled out our professional development, we've done a bunch of things. Now, I would argue that any professional development we do is done best when we activate teacher values, when we activate the things they care about. Don't have to spend long on it. Just remember, hey, I know some people in this room really love their subject. This is about that. Let's go. Hey, I know some people in this room really worry about certain students in their class who are coming from particularly vulnerable homes. Let's go. This is about that. Come on, activate your values. Doesn't have to be long. We don't have to bang on about it forever. All right. So now, this is like my little concoction graph of the kinds of things that build motivation from a research perspective. And we can talk about the extrinsic factors, we can talk about the intrinsic factors, but ultimately it can look like this when we're focusing on student outcomes. We can say, great, we've built positive student outcomes here. Look at what we're doing. We're seeing this change in our school. We've got this change. And when we're talking about this from a PBL perspective, we're talking about data, practices, and systems. Look at our data. It's showing us how well things are going. And for some teachers, they're like, awesome. I'm in. This is working. Fantastic. Other teachers go, yeah, but that was hard. And that's not a slight on them because it's hard. It's really effortful to do the stuff. And what we know from behavioral research is if your room's really noisy and you go, hey, quiet down, and it goes from really noisy to really quiet, you've got this really big change in the environment. Big changes in the environment are really salient reinforcers for the behavior that achieve that change. It's easier for that behavior to be reinforced than the hard work as an antecedent intervention that just leads to a smooth classroom. What's the change in the environment when you have a smooth classroom? It's just smooth. The change is like this. It's not particularly salient. It's a lot of work, and it's great. And then we say, okay, well, look at how well our students are doing. So the change in the environment really is kind of like an artifact of the data we're collecting, but that might not land for people. But if I go like this, boom, yell, it's like, man, that's why people say, no, you got to get tough. We see a big change in the environment. You got to get tough. All this proactive stuff, is it working? I don't know. I just feel like it's hard work. So we've got the data outcomes. We've got the experience of doing this. You know the hard work? You know when people are like, oh man, I'm the fittest I've ever been. How does that feel? Tired. Sore. Hungry. Sometimes doing the work that gets you to the place you want to be, it doesn't always feel fun. And then, and I think this is the complicated one, and the story I tell myself about the work I've been doing and the outcomes I've achieved can completely change my relationship to the environment, to the data, to the outcomes. And the values of the story. Our values are that story. So we can completely invalidate great implementation data. Write it off. It's worth 0 to that teacher. It will not reinforce their implementation. So we need to find a way to connect to their values, to connect to their story, to understand that story. Not to therapize them, I'm not a psychologist, but to connect so that when we coach, we're coaching to that story and not assuming that it's going to be a data point that's going to turn them into the fired up teacher we hope. Some teachers are going to look at the positive student outcomes and it's going to connect to their story and they're going to be fired up. And we've got models for that. Has anyone heard of the Gusky model of professional development? You don't try and turn their belief around. You get them doing the practice, and as they do the practice, they see the outcomes and they go, yes, I'm in. But I don't know if that fits for anyone. Has anyone worked with a teacher like I described? You come in and they say, check this out, look how well you're doing. They say, yeah. But isn't there somewhere else for this kid? Has anyone had that conversation? Am I going over it too many times? It's like, you're just like, So, values, they can help us accept the hard stuff as part of the work. It doesn't make it all easy. Because it's not easy. Teaching's not easy. It's not easy working with a learner that's got significant challenges at home. Now, it's definitely harder for them. Sometimes I have to remind, like I've had the gentle conversation, it's like, yeah, that's a really hard time you have with that particular learner. But remember, when they leave your class and you feel exhausted and go home, they're still them. They still carry their stuff in their backpack everywhere they go. We are the protective factor, like Jess shared. Values can help us accept and understand the complex things in our gig, in our job. This is not all drawn from educational research. This is an emergent space in education. We've seen really, really good outcomes in spaces where we're working individually with young people with autism or with all sorts of different experiences. And the adults in the room who have an interesting time supporting young people who have a complex relationship with environments. They are more well and more able to implement with fidelity when we do values-based work. So how do we engage with values? Well, let's not wait until it's a problem. Don't wait for it to be a problem before you start engaging with values. Do it at tier 1 for staff. Engage their values at tier 1. That gives you a foundation that you can anchor from, you can build on. If you wait to have a values conversation when the dynamic is busted, mate, why are you asking me about my values? I already hate you, I hate the kid. Why would I tell you what my values are? It's all burnt. No. Build it into the ground floor. Make it the ground. Make it the foundation of our conversations, because then we can have the conversation later on. Hey, I remember you saying you really cared about this. Can we have a conversation about what's going on around that as an idea? It's putting it in the middle of the table together, being honest and open and having a conversation about it. So here are the 4 things. Learning objective. I do want to do the learning objective. Values? Well, that's clever. Sorry, it's silly. Values. Align, change to values. Not just the school values. Yes, the school values. But if organizations don't behave, people do, then the organization's values may or may not reflect the people. And if you want the people to behave, not the organization, then let's understand the people's values. And not just claim that there are some disembodied buildings values. We need undeniable data. I don't want to have a conversation with someone where they're looking at it going, yeah, but I want it to be compelling. Compelling to them. The story of the data must match the story. And we're coaching for connection. So if we value values, we start by making our values visible. We all have values. But are they visible? Do we talk about them? Not the school values, our values. Me, Russell, who I am, what I care about. I stand in a room like this at the expense of not getting to work with learners so much anymore. I loved working with kids. It was my favorite thing. I loved it. But it got to a point where I could work with a group of 8, 15, 27, and that was great. But the impact, I wanted that to spread, and at some point, I felt like I'm going to have to move out of that space where I get that personal joy to get a bigger, broader... You get it, right? Did anyone become a school leader for that reason? Did anyone become a system leader for that reason? Let's move towards our values. What do we mean by that? Well, at every moment, and this is a really Russ Harris thing. Has anyone read a Russ Harris book? The Happiness Trap? The Reality Slap? Is that the other one? I think, yeah, I probably should have a few more of his titles there. His work is amazing. Now, he's a medical doctor that moved into psychology, and he practices an approach called acceptance commitment therapy. Now, I'm not promoting this as like a therapy approach, but it's just, he talks about us moving towards our values. If we understand what our values are, then when we get to moment-to-moment decisions in classrooms, we have a choice point. We can take the step towards our values, or we can get pulled around by our thoughts, feelings, emotions, the classroom environment, and we end up moving away from our values. When teachers are out of alignment, my belief is that they've been pulled away from their values by complex environments, by home lives that are stressful, by a workload that's intense. And so if we anchor things in values, we can model for them what it means to do a hard thing and take a step towards values. We can be out of alignment with ourselves in the classroom. It's okay to notice, man, I'm really noticing how hard it is to be proactive today. I'm just noticing. It's okay to notice. If you notice, that's not you taking a step away from your values. That's you recognizing that it's pretty tempting to. Let's model noticing. I'm noticing that I'm tired today, and I'm worried I'm not going to give you enough check for understanding. And one of my values is engagement. I don't want you just sitting there passively. Let's teach our staff about how values are important. If we understand values, we can do all sorts of hard things when we know what we're working on. When things are at their hardest, you need something to lean on. And we want to model values-based decision-making. Now, I think this is a really tough decision. We're going to have to allocate resources here. And I'm really sorry because everyone's got something they care about in here. And I just want to let you know that we've taken that into consideration. But remember, the values that we're wanting to see enacted in our school, me personally, the impact we want to have, means that we're going to go this way with our decision. If you've got something you would like to come and share to me after the meeting today, let me know. This is how you might talk about that and model that in a meeting. We've got to be on the lookout for values. Hey, please, you're fine. Engage staff in small values identification. Grind. Okay, get out your family shield. Draw the 5 things you care about the most on the shield in icons. No. Please don't do that. Unless you want to. Unless your staff would love it, then do it. Use your oars. What? We're going to talk about it in a second? And then I think the flip side of the concern coin. These are things that we're going to talk about. And I think they're helpful. And I think we've got to listen and we've got to honor sharing. Thanks so much for sharing. Even if I don't agree, even if it's hard, even if it's maybe going in a slightly different direction to what I would like it to be, I want to celebrate that you've shared. I want to reinforce value sharing. I don't want to punish someone for sharing their values. That's not my value. Values on values. And we want to reinforce when staff move towards their value. When you know that something's hard for them, and you can see that they've taken a step towards their values and not away, let's reinforce that step. Let's do it every time. Let's not miss. But it means that we need to be grounded in our classroom practice and in our coaching practice, in our leadership practice. All right, so what are our oars? Well, this is the work of Wendy Reinke, Reinke, Herman, and Sprick. And it's motivational interviewing for effective classroom management. And open-ended questions, affirmations, reflective listening, and summarizing. Now, this book, I think it's really, really interesting because it's not just about we have this conversation and that's the answer. You have to build it into a process, a rigorous process of support. It's a coaching model, but it's a values-infused coaching model. What are you concerned about? These are my open-ended questions. What benefits could we see? What could we see if we did this? Hey, what got you into teaching in the first place? How would you like things to be different? They're open-ended. They're Possibility questions. And if I've been in their classroom, even if there's stuff that we might not be thrilled about, there's something I can genuinely find in every classroom that is worth celebrating from a teacher. There really is. Man, I can see how much you care. I can see how much you care because it's got you so wound up tight that you're about to explode. But you're about to explode because you care, and it's not working. I can see how much you care. Okay. It is frustrating. Yeah, I get that. If you've gone down this path previously, or something that sounded like this, it is frustrating to work really hard to implement. And then it's just a new leader comes in and it's ditched. That is frustrating. We don't lose anything by acknowledging that something that's frustrating is frustrating. Sometimes we feel like by vocalizing it, we make it true. We're just noticing it. If we acknowledge something that someone says, it doesn't make it true, we can acknowledge we can acknowledge mistakes within our school community that have happened. Yeah, I can imagine how that could be frustrating. And not in like from your perspective, if we were looking at the world in a really weird way, I can imagine how that would work. No. Giving them the dignity. I just want to make sure I've got this right. I can hear you concerned about implementing a science of learning because of how much time it takes to implement. Is that right? Okay. You care so much about your students, you're worried that they're going to lose their creativity. And you've been frustrated in the past with implementation efforts that have been abandoned. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Now, you also said you care about your students' creativity here. So let's make that what we focus on as our measure. Let's try this on. We can have a conversation here around really difficult stuff, really complex. Like the philosophical belief conversations, they're the hard ones. I don't believe in extrinsic reinforcement. You've never heard that one, have you? Don't believe in it? What do you mean? Should we just stop your paycheck then? Don't do that. It doesn't work. What if we stopped your pay? Would you keep teaching? Yeah, I would. And I think this is where the concern coin fits. Sometimes, and this is the work of Evelyn Gould, amazing researcher, the flip side of a concern is often a value. Sometimes the things we're most concerned about, if we can understand what they are, you can turn it over and you can see what the value is on the other side. The concern coin, flip it over, see what's there. All right, if we ask a follow-up question, it's really easy for them to kind of throw the concern at us and we're like, oh, man, just if only you had buy-in. But if we ask the follow-up question, we spend too much time collecting data. If these are really close to home, that's deliberate, by the way. How would you prefer to use the time? Kill their creativity. They're going to become rote bots. They're just going to be so rote. Well, what do you want to prioritize? What do you care about? Ask the next question. Now, maybe this is because I'm like a little bit kind of busy and in your face, but when someone throws a concern, that's meant to get you to step back. It's a protective thing, I think. It's reinforced by escape. When someone throws a concern, I'm like, oh, thank you for your concern. Let me step in here, into the space. Let's be vulnerable. Well, what do you care about? We shouldn't use that extrinsic reinforcement. People are complex. I feel like I forget sometimes that every child is their own constellation of experiences, needs, sensations, the whole thing. They're a funky little universe all in their own right. That's a kiddo. And now we've got complex adults that have been in that constellation for years and years and years in all sorts of different complicated environments. Let's ask them about some of that history. I love it. Thanks so much. I've already done this in the past and it didn't work. Thanks for sharing. I'm wondering, what do you think we can learn from that experience? Let's step in. Step in. Oh, okay, so that didn't work. We've already done it. Well, what can we learn? I wonder what's new about this one. Is there anything that you think could be added to that or done differently to change your previous experience? So now we're aligning change to values. Practices and systems to support purpose. Now, practices and systems, where have we heard that before? But we're teaching and reiterating that all of the PBL structures, the systems and practices and supports, the fidelity measures, which, by the way, I'm all for. I'm not anti. I love them. You need fidelity. You can't do it without fidelity. But all of that stuff is to support teachers to engage in their best work. They're for them so that they can do the work for the learner. And we use team structures. Let's use those structures to create open conversations. Let's use our team structures to do this work, to ask these questions. If someone throws a concern out in a team, the team has to be safe enough to step in and ask the question. Acknowledge the challenge of change. Someone really wise once said to me that change is perceived as loss and experienced as grief, even if we know we need it. Change is perceived as loss and experienced as grief, even if we know we need it. We were chatting about this before. Oh, I hate this system, but don't you dare take it away. It's my comfort blanket, horrible system. But let's use the language of towards and away as part of change. Yeah, this might be uncomfortable. But change is, it's allowed to be uncomfortable. What does doing a hard thing feel like? It feels hard? What does doing a challenging thing feel like? Challenging? But sometimes doing a hard thing can also feel challenging. I'm just playing with words, sorry. It's okay to talk about it. No, we don't need to belabor it. We don't have to signal it. We don't have to tell everyone that they should be feeling terrible. It's just if you notice, bring the goals closer. Like we do for a learner. All right, undeniable data. Data that are not valued can be dismissed. Let's use stories that matter. And let's be open to measuring things staff care about. Big five. But also creativity? Sure. Let's measure creativity. How do you want to do that? If you care about creativity, let's measure it. It'll be a fun conversation in a PLC. How are we going to measure creativity? But it's okay. We have to be bold enough and brave enough and believe in this stuff enough that I'm willing to measure what you want to measure. Because I think it works. And let's try things on. Be open to challenging questions about data and values. Let's ask, is this actually helping us move towards the people we want to be and the school we want to be? Is it moving us towards our outcomes, the things we care about? Is it? De-implement if it's not. Don't strap 3 dead horses together and hope that's going to go faster. We can embed this into any of our systems and structures. And we've got -1 minute to do one practice. But I think this connection piece is really important. We're coaching for connection. You develop a shared language between staff members. If you share that language together, you share things together. Build on strengths of practice. Everyone has something they're okay at. Even if it's okay, we'll take it. And let's use this friendly staff. Make them our champions. I don't mind if a teacher tells me I don't want to do that as a support. Oh, okay, thanks for telling me. That does this. That support functionally is a prompt for you to use the practice. Let's think about a way creatively for you to be prompted in your practice. It doesn't have to look like that. It could look like this or this or this. No, learner, we'll only teach you this replacement behavior. It must look like this. This is your replacement behavior. No. We could teach you a range of different functionally equivalent replacement behaviors. It's not about the form and shape of the support, it's what the support does. And if a teacher doesn't like that one, find another one. We can give choice. Build flexibility and freedom. And I'm okay if someone wants to try something on like a coat. I have this conversation all the time. You know what? You're in a shop, we're trying this practice on. You're taking it off the rack. You're putting it on like a coat. You don't have to buy it. Let's just put it on. Let's believe it. Let's put it on like we're committed to it. We're going to do it properly for a bit. And remember, we care about our subject. So we're going to put this on like a coat and believe that it's going to make a difference. All right. And we want them to be in the room. They need to be grounded. Their feet need to be on the carpet and they need to feel their toes. If they're not in the room, if they're time traveling, if they're disconnected, if they're thinking about a parent conversation that's not happened yet, if they're thinking about the staff conversation yesterday and they're working with their learners, they can't see the learner that's done the thing we've been wanting them to do for 6 weeks. They need to be present and grounded in the room. Thank you so much. I really hope you find something important or useful in this. Values can transform our experiences of change. They can, but we need to enact them and embody them. Thank you. Let's go.